You're going to need 8 pieces, each about 400 millimeters long or so, maybe a little bit longer. So about like that. I gathered up a few pieces that were fallen to the ground probably last fall and some last summer a little bit. When you go looking for wood, you want something that's about this small, maybe up to this size here. Something like this. It's a good compromise between being large enough to have some strength, but not too large that you can still work with it. I would suggest something like this would be ideal. So, let's look at the bark a little bit. This piece is ideal because most of the bark is still on it, but the bark is loose. When the bark loosens up, it means that this branch has been dead for a while already. So the bark comes off fairly easily, but it doesn't fall off. So this branch is probably dry enough to work with, but not too dry that it'll have some strength to it. Just a couple of things to look out for when you're choosing wood. Here are the two extremes. This is nearly dried out. It's got no strength left at all. You can see that the fibers have completely disintegrated, and you can't really do anything with this at all. This is good for compost. This one here is still quite green. If I peel back a little bit like this branch, by the way, was on the ground due to wind damage. I didn't cut this off the tree. But you can smell this wood. It smells fresh. This even has some moisture to it. You can feel it. This is wet. You're going to have a very hard time cutting this. In fact, the fibers like to stick in the saw teeth and gum up the teeth. The saw gets caught in the kerf. Avoid this if you can. So you want something in between those two. So you're going to be working with round branches. The first thing you might want to do is make yourself a little saddle so that when you end up chiseling onto this branch, you can have it sit a little bit more stable. You can even have a clamp on top like this and then chisel right beside the clamp. This will add a lot of stability. Now, to make a saddle like this is very simple. Just use another branch. You'll notice there's a little bit of an angle here. That's so that when you put a branch in here, it can wedge in just a little bit. So, just a slight angle. Cut down about halfway through, maybe a little bit more than halfway. Opposite angle on the other side. Go down to about the same. You try and line up the two cuts on both ends. Chop that out, and it'll cut off pretty easily, and then that'll give you you'll want 4 pieces this long. I've removed all the bark from it. If the bark is really tight on there, leave it on there, but it could be a sign that the wood is going to be a little green still. Now, since this is a rustic project, let's make measuring fairly simple. I'm just going to go right to my elbow here and to this finger, and then I could just make a mark right there. If the wood is too green, the first thing you'll notice is when you cut it, it's not very easy. It tends to grab the fibers and they want to gum up the teeth. This one's not too bad, but it's a little bit on the green side. I'm not going to use this. Arrange your pieces so that they'll sit fairly flat and they look pleasing. This sits nicely, but you can easily see this, and that's not nice. I think I like that. And then you can mark where you're going to cut on the 2 lower ones. Mark those first. and you mark the full width of the branch. Don't go underneath and mark that, because it's going to be very, very narrow. Oh, I think I like that better there. At this point, I would recommend labeling them. So we could do 1, whoops, 1, 2, trying to do this so you can see it, 3 and 4, like that. And you can take a picture as it sits. That way you can always go back and know exactly where these branches sit and how they look, because your notches are going to be all different. Another thing you need to mark here is the side, because once you cut your notches, it'll fit much differently if one is cut on top here and the next one is cut along the side. Like that. It just helps you to line up the branch properly to cut it. Let's start by carefully marking these out. So we can see that this branch has a little bit of an angle here, so we'll have to follow that. A little bit of bark left here. Okay, so all of this. Well, that wasn't good. I should have removed all that bark. I'm not practicing what I'm preaching here. Oh, all the way down to there. So those look like they are lined up. Okay.